nutrition and health beyond the gut-brain axis. As Professor Suri did make a mention, that it has a very, very important role with reference to all the organs in the human system. So since there's a lot of data and a lot of talks going on between gut-brain axis, I thought I will touch upon the topics beyond gut-brain axis. So when we talk of the gut microbiome, we do understand that it hosts a trillion of microorganisms. And as Professor Suri did already make a mention, that there are several cells, a lot of hormones which are working on in and off to prevent or to act as a pathogenesis pathway to non-communicable diseases. But here, when we are talking of gut, we need to understand that not only digestion, apart from that, when there is gut microbiota, which in turn acts on indigestible fibers, they liberate a lot of short chain fatty acids. And these short chain fatty acids have an important role in modulating the immune responses as well as tumorigenesis in the system. Not only that, if you see a lot of vegetarian population, a lot of vegan population who do not consume milk and milk products are also deficient in vitamin B12, but all of them do not express vitamin B12 deficiency because there is synthesis of vitamin B12, folate, and thiamine with the help of gut microbiota. It's important to understand that there are several factors influencing the composition of gut microbiota. There is a lot of variation in gender itself. Since the whole conference, the virtual conference is, revolving around women health, I thought I'll put a lot of concentration on gut microbiome and women health. So as I mentioned to you that there are several factors which are modifiable and non-modifiable factors which have an influence on the gut microbiota composition. For example, if I'm going to talk of mode of delivery, as I mentioned to you, the modifiable factors are the ones which are diet, environment, drugs, all of them are the modifiable factors. There are certain non-modifiable factors, like the maternal age is one, second is genetics. But I would say in genetics also, if we are going to have the genes dormant and we are going to expose the dormant genes to a lot of environmental factors, they are going to become expressive. So that extent also we can understand that lifestyle has an important role to all the factors. Now, as I mentioned to you, that mode of delivery, if the mode of delivery is vaginal, it's much more having a healthier microbiome in the infant when compared to a C-section. You would notice that there are several studies to tell us that Corynebacterium are some of the pathogenic bacteria which are present in the gut or exposed to the gut of the infant if the patient has delivered a C-section in comparison to a vaginal delivery. And it's important to note that there is a wonderful saying which says that what you sow, you reap. So similarly, it's the first few years of life, the first 4 to 36 months of life, which have a very, very important role in developing the gut microbiota, which in turn has an influence on the rest of existence. So in the first years of life, a real genetic imprinting of the gut microbiota takes place, which then determines the state of health in the rest of existence. Because at birth, the digestive tract of the newborns is completely sterile and it is colonized immediately starting from birth. Now, next you see that there are a lot of changes in the gut microbiome at every stage of the life cycle. As I mentioned to you, the vaginal and the C-section. Second is childhood. Now, we all know that a lot of underdeveloped and developing countries also have the biggest problem of under 5 mortality. All of us are running towards immunity, building up immunity through nutrients, vitamin A, C, E, protein, zinc, selenium, omega-3 fatty acids. But at the end of the day, we should remember that the gut is the largest, obviously, apart from an endocrine organ, it is the largest immune organ also. So our entire immunity depends on gut health. So if we are going to track gut eubiosis in childhood, we can help to reduce, the infections by building up the immunity. Another important aspect is puberty, adulthood, menopause, and aging. What is the variation then? You will see that during puberty and menopause, hormonal changes contribute to shifts in microbial richness and composition. You will see here, based on this slide, there is a lot of microbial diversity. In the male population, you see a lot of bifidobacterium. And this bifidobacterium, according to the MIVAS study, finds that there is a risk of arterial stiffness in reference to the male population. With reference to the female population, you will see there is abundance of Prevotella and bacteroides, which in turn help in improving vascular health. Now, when it comes to menopause, what is it? The important factor here is once there is movement from the reproductive age to menopause, the female population are similar in terms of the male population with reference to the gut microbiota. And with reference to aging, we do understand the consumption of dietary fiber, food patterns change because of dentures, digestion becomes a little sluggish. Apart from that, recurrent admissions, antibiotics, infections also have an important role with reference to the microbial diversity in this stage of life. So, as I made a mention to you, childhood, there is very minimal differences pre-puberty with reference to microbiota composition in girls and boys. But once they walk into puberty, there is a divergence in the composition begins. And in adulthood, you will see greater microbial diversity in the female population, wherein they are having more of short chain fatty acid producing bacteria, which is the symbiont in comparison to in the male population. As I mentioned to you, it has more of bifidobacteria, which causes arterial stiffness. This is also one of the reasons which plays an important role with reference to vascular health in comparison to women and men. And as I mentioned to you, in menopause state, there is a decline in estrogen producing bacteria. I mean, so estrogen reduction is there, which again reduces the short chain fatty acid producing bacteria, and the microbial diversity reduces. So it is similar both in male and female population. Another important part of with reference to menopause is there is not only alteration in gut microbiota, also alteration in oral, vaginal, urinary microbiota, and most importantly, there are potential digestive issues. So you will see a lot of female population having lot of changes with reference to gastrointestinal complications or problems, simplest being irritable bowel syndrome. You will also note that the gut microbiota not only actively modulates sex hormone levels, these hormone levels further alter the gut microbiota. So they have a bidirectional relationship. Now, as I made a mention to you that they have a role in the GI diseases, not only GI, also it has an important role with reference to neurology, cardiovascular, respiratory illnesses, and inflammatory processes in the body. Now, with reference to potential role of gut dysbiosis affecting women, we would talk of PCOS as one. When I would talk of PCOS, I'm talking of hyperandrogenism, talking of endotoxemia, insulin resistance, inflammation which is chronic. Also, you will see there are changes in dysfunctional ovarian functions. Apart from that, you will also see there is an impaired metabolism of bile acid, also short chain fatty acids. So, which all leads to the pathogenesis of PCOS. Another important aspect is breast, cervical, and ovarian cancer. In fact, there is the International Consortium of Microbiome and Cancer, which talks to us, tells us that, not only the development of disease, protection of disease with reference to cancers, also responses to immunotherapy, chemotherapy, as well as the side effects of cancer also is directly proportional to the gut health. Now, last but not the least is in the postmenopausal area, we would find that postmenopausal obesity, bone diseases like osteoporosis, Alzheimer's disease are also very predominant in the female population postmenopausal. Now, this is a very interesting slide which tells us when was the evolution of microbiota gut brain axis. Actually, we came to know about it. In 1998, the pediatric neuropsychiatrist Susan Swedo discovered a link between streptococcal infections and psychiatric disorders in children. So, as early as the 19th century, we started understanding there was a link between gut brain axis. I think now we are sitting in the 21st century where we would talk more beyond gut brain axis. So, this is a very, very interesting and important slide in the entire presentation. As I mentioned to you, we know more about gut brain axis. What about the other organs? Each organ has been influenced by the gut microbiota. You take the heart, there is atherosclerosis, and unfortunately, we are hearing a lot of thrombotic events, hypertension with reference to the lung, COPD, liver, we have MASH, we have hepatocellular carcinoma with reference to gut pancreas axis, type 2 diabetes, gut muscle axis. There is a lot of sarcopenia, which we've not been hearing in the previous decade. Now we've been hearing a lot of sarcopenia, frailty, osteoporosis. With reference to gut-skin axis, unfortunately, there is a lot up from as simple as acne to as severe as psoriasis. With reference to gut reproductive axis, we've been hearing a lot of infertility. Clinics have mushroomed off late in the past few years. See a lot of postmenopausal osteoporosis, AKI, and nephrolithiasis. The last but not the least is gut bladder axis, wherein they have a painful or an overactive bladder. All this depends on the gut microbiota strains. I think this is not new science which I'm talking. I think it was the COVID era, and I think we are still in the COVID era, where we know that the gut microbiota played a very, very important role, not only with reference to immunity, but also to the leaky gut, opportunistic infections like COVID-19, leading to COVID pneumonia, cytokine storm, AKI, mortality associated with gut dysbiosis. Now, this is yet another important uh, picture which tells us that what the pathobionts and symbionts do to metabolic health. So when we talk of the pathobionts, what do? They actually increase the pro-inflammatory cytokines, increase the inflammatory molecules like the peptidoglycans, also the lipopolysaccharides. There is endotoxemia, gut permeability, which in turn worsens adiposity, insulin resistance, which worsens calorie intake, obesity, and metabolic syndrome. Whereas what do the symbionts do? They help to reduce the pro-inflammatory cytokines and increase the beneficial molecules, that is the short-chain fatty acids and the indoles, improving insulin sensitivity. Not only that, we see that a lot of population who consume an animal-based diet, their gut microbiota is much different and more towards the pathobiome in comparison to the synbiome, which is found in plant-based individuals. We also see that apart from these organs which have been affected, an important area is colorectal cancer and IBD, whereas ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. Apart from that, we also see that those who have poor gut dysbiosis, maybe because of poor glycemic control and glycemic variability, they find more of micro and macrovascular complications because of poor gut health. Now, this is an interesting slide which tells us the egg came first or the chicken. Similarly, is it gut dysbiosis before diabetes or after diabetes? We do understand that diabetes walks in with insulin resistance. There are several factors to it. But yes, importantly to understand that gut dysbiosis, chronic inflammation comes before type 2 diabetes walks in. So this is the pathway is almost similar. It's not any different. It's a lot of inflammation, increase in pro-inflammatory cytokines, the gut integrity is lost, because of which there is a leaky gut and increase in inflammatory cytokines. Now, with reference to gut dysbiosis and PCOS, I already made a mention to you that when one consumes a very high fat, unhealthy fat, trans fat, saturated fat, more of simple carbs, also alcohol has an important role to play with gut dysbiosis, leading to hyperandrogenism, dysfunction of ovaries, endotoxemia, abnormal secretion of brain gut peptides, as well as follicular development is affected, leading to an impairment in the sex organs, sex hormones, and pathogenesis of PCOS. There is a direct relationship with diet and gut dysbiosis. There is some sparse data to tell us that probiotic supplementation has an impact on regulation of hormones and inflammatory indicators. Similar pathway goes on to increasing the risk of gestational diabetes. And as I made a mention to you previously, it has the International Cancer Consortium does talk to us that the profile of the gut microbiota and their metabolites can be an important biomarker for breast cancer. Also, there is importance given to the fact that pathogenic bacteria like Citrobacteria, E. coli, Clostridium may negatively influence the progression of breast cancer. But thankfully, we also have the symbionts, that is the Roseburia, which have a protective effect. I made a mention to you that the gut microbiota can play an important role with reference to response to immunotherapy and chemotherapy. Also may worsen or improve the side effects with reference to these therapies like mucositis and inflammation. Now, this is a very well-known fact that role of diet and gut dysbiosis can alter the microbiota. Today's date, the children are not only the children, the adults are exposed to a lot of commercial fructose, refined carbohydrate coming from ultra processed foods. In fact, the ICMR 2020, What India Eats, which was published, by CMART did make a mention that not only the urban population is prey to ultra processed foods, also the rural population, there is a penetration of 4.4% of ultra processed foods, which alter the gut microbiota and increase the inflammatory molecules like lipopolysaccharides, peptidoglycans, also impair the bile acid metabolism, which increases the gut microbial composition to firmicutes and proteobacteria, which can worsen gut health and associated complications. This is yet another important message which I want to share. According to the Nurses Health Study and the uh, American Heart Association's Presidential Advisory Guidelines 2017 by American Heart Association, which does very clearly tell us that trans fats have an important role to play with the development of metabolic syndrome, and increase in gut dysbiosis is one important link between the two. Now, how do we want your trans fatty acids to be prepared? At least in the North Indian and the entire, I would say, pan India, the preference of consuming double burst cheese pizza, or consuming butter naan, dal makhani, butter paneer, butter chicken masala, reheated popcorn in the theaters which one consumes with added cheese and added butter to it. All of these are sources of trans fats. In fact, the American Heart Association Presidential Advisory Guidelines 2017 does also clear the fact that saturated fat also can add to gut dysbiosis. Now, it's important to understand that India is actually going, trans fat free as early as 2022, according to FSSAI Eat Right India movement. This is yet another important slide which tells us that, when we talk of artificial sweeteners, helping to improve calorie intake, improving weight loss, indirectly, because of weight loss, there is insulin resistance, which is coming down and improving glycemic control. On the other hand, there is I would say, a conflicting sort of a data which tells us that accumulating evidence suggests that artificial sweeteners may disrupt the delicate balance of gut microbiome, inducing dysbiosis, metabolic alterations, and inflammation, where we need larger data to tell us whether we need to be off artificial sweeteners to prevent gut dysbiosis. Now, this is an important evolution of health, wherein in 2000 BC they said eat the root, 1000 AD they said don't eat the root, tell a prayer. Later on, they said, don't be superstitious and say a prayer. Instead, drink potion, which is venom, which they then said that venom is a poison, better to take a pill. And I think the COVID era taught us very clearly that the pill is ineffective. Here, take this antibiotic and replace it with eat the root. So, do we go in with an anti-inflammatory diet? Is there any anti-inflammatory diet which is available in the market? There is a combination of foods which help us with this anti-inflammatory effect. So I would say the prebiotic, probiotic. We are not in the era of, though we are in the era of fecal microbiota transplant, this goes beyond this talk. And last but not the least is secondary bile acids and short chain fatty acids. With reference to diet, I would say we need to choose on a psychobiotic diet. That is a diet which would provide strains like Bifidobacterium longum, Lactobacillus helveticus, which will help to improve the gut-brain axis with the help of whole grains and prebiotic fruits and vegetables. Obviously, everybody is aware of the Mediterranean diet. I'll go a little low on the probiotics, prebiotics, synbiotics. The combination of pre and pro is synbiotics, and all fermented foods are not probiotics, which I would want to share with this audience here. Now nonetheless, after you have consumed post probiotics, there is post metabolites, which also have an improvement in gut health. Now, as I mentioned to you, fecal microbiota was also transplanted as early as World War II, where the German soldiers were suffering from dysentery. They were provided a fecal slurry or a yellow soup, which did help to improve food poisoning and diarrhea in those days. But I would say choose the 5 R's, remove the stressors, that is the drugs, the unhealthy diet, and if alcohol, also artificial sweeteners, replace it with raw fruits and vegetables, that is the prebiotic fruits and vegetables, which will help to synthesize probiotics naturally. Re-inoculate with the garlic, onion, barley, oats, millets, whole wheats, which are prebiotic in nature, which will synthesize probiotics in your gut. Not to forget, there is a leaky gut, so we need micronutrients like vitamin A, C, E, omega-3, zinc, selenium to repair the leaky gut and achieve eubiosis. So probiotics are those live microorganisms which confer a health benefit on the host. What I would want to make a mention here is not all capsules will provide you all strains of probiotics which will confer good metabolic health. In fact, each strain has a different role to play. As I mentioned to you, Rose Buria has a different role to play. Bifidobacterium has a different role to play. Lactobacillus has a different role to play. It could be wound healing in a diabetic foot, or it could be helping in PCOS, GDM. Each strain has a different role to play. So we should, focus on prebiotics, natural prebiotics, which will help to synthesize a variety of strain of lactobacilli naturally, which will help to improve host health. So there are some systemic reviews which tell us that probiotics can be used to improve metabolic outcomes, but we need larger studies. Most importantly, three keywords which we need to remember is what is the strain, what is the duration one needs to consume, what is the therapeutic dose, and storage and temperature of the probiotic strain, how it is consumed. All these play an important role with reference to their influence on metabolic health. Also, as I mentioned to you, there is some data, also sparse data, to tell us that probiotics may help in GDM. But remember that once again, the problem comes with the therapeutic dose, the strain, the temperature, the storage. All of this has an important role when it comes to a recommendation. So I would simply say go prebiotic to synthesize probiotic, not to forget the post metabolites which are obtained when you consume a probiotic also. For example, I had one of my PhD scholars who were looking at kombucha, which is a tea mushroom drink for studying metabolic health. But when that kombucha was bought from the market, it had plenty of sugar in it. So we cannot choose such a probiotic which will only worsen metabolic health of an individual. So we have the fructooligosaccharides, galactoligosaccharides, maltoligosaccharides, soy oligosaccharides, all of them which play an important role in synthesizing good short chain fatty acids, which in fact confer the metabolic health. So one needs to remember what is a prebiotic. It is a dietary fiber that modulates the microbiome balance by selectively supporting the growth of health promoting bacterial species. So these are certain foods like the oats, beta glucan in the oats, the fructooligosaccharides in wheat, barley, and millets, the galactoligosaccharides in beans, the galactoligosaccharides in cow's milk, also the oligosaccharides which is present in mother's milk or breast milk. Then I said the prebiotic fruits are the apple and the avocados. The prebiotic vegetables are onion, garlic. All these are prebiotics which need to be consumed to improve health. These psychobiotic foods are similar. The whole grains, prebiotic fruits, vegetables, fermented foods, and legumes, which not only behave like prebiotics, also are soluble fiber,
Please hurry up.
lending.
Please hurry up.
Yes, sir. I am finishing, sir. So this was a study which was done in Westar rats. We'd induced ulcerative colitis in about 24 Westar rats and fed them pre and probiotic, naturally traditional fermented probiotic foods. And we found that there was complete remission in human population of 2.5 years of duration. So I would say every day we live and every meal we eat, we influence the great microbial organ inside us for better or for worse. You are what you eat. One-stop solution is to go with natural plant-based diet, go prebiotic, probiotic, post-symbiotic, psychobiotic with diet. And I would say when we can see this animal consuming leaves, it should also tell us that we also need to go plant-based. Thank you so much to ICAWH for this wonderful opportunity.